There is this famous physicist from Pakistan, Dr. Parvez Hudboy. He notes something very significant. He says the Arabian civilization failed to produce an equivalent word for science. This is what he says. They have the word ilm, which is knowledge, but that's not equivalent for science. But if you read the Bhagavad Gita, there you will find a discussion between Krishna and on the difference between ilm and science. There it is ilm and vignan.
You know,
These two.
this is actually a beautiful point because it's a mistake to try and differentiate them. It being ilm and keeping it united as ilm.
By the way, the guy who
very
he
good thing.
quoted is actually an atheist, Hood boy.
Yeah.
He forgot to mention that little detail, didn't he?
That is
Yeah.
the issue for
so
Jesus.
just
for
to
Why would
him
finish
you
to
off that
expect
thought,
an atheist to speak good about Islam, especially a murtad like this guy?
Yeah.
So
No, it's not
whoever
about
has a
Islam.
Muslim
I think
name
Brother
is a
Islam
Muslim for
Hakim
them.
wanted to say something. Go ahead, brother. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, sorry. Actually, it's not about Islam, but he is talking about the Arabian civilization.
No, he's
That
talking about Islam.
civilization.
I know that guy. He's
Okay.
talking
Yeah,
about
you.
Islam. In fact, if he knew about the Arabs, okay, which mostly were Muslims, the early scientists within that era, okay, whether you use the term science or not, as long as they were the prime at that time, when Europe was in the Dark Ages, it was the Arabs and the Muslims, and also the ones who were in the neighboring countries. All of them, they made a lot of progress in science. Yes, Al-Khawarizmi, Ibn Sina, all these people. Ibn Sina's book was basically the primary book or the medical textbook in Europe. They were using that basically. Can you believe that?
massive progress. And here's a book on Ibrahim Ibn Sina. I happen to be reading one of his geometry books.
Kitab al-Tib.
Brother,
That's the one, yeah.
Brother Hashim, your ancestors were so great that this Al-Khawarizmi, for the major part of his work, what he has done is translation of Sanskrit work to Arabic. His famous book is.
They were not
That's
just
complete
translators.
garbage. That's
They
nice.
used the knowledge and then they actually added on to it. For example, take algorithms. The Indians didn't have algorithms back then. They had numbers, but they didn't have algorithms, which the Muslims at that time were the ones who introduced it to Europe and so on.
And they didn't have algebra, and algebra is
Yes.
particularly useful. But also the system of geometry they built was a massive expansion. Alchemy has its name because it's al-chemi. They basically invented chemistry, and that certainly wasn't mostly around in India. Almost all of the methods, techniques, and writings and so on that they developed. It is completely historically illiterate to try and pretend that all they did was translate stuff from India or other cultures. In fact, Islam and the Islamic Empire was particularly good at crediting its sources. For example, we only know Brahmagupta is the one who gave the rules for multiplying positive and negative numbers because the Arabs preserved that and credited him with it. Contrast that with, for example, in Europe, where they ripped everything they could and renamed it all under European names. The Arabs were not like that. And by the way, I say Arabs to even include the Persians, etc., because Arab is not a racial term; it's someone who speaks Arabic, and the Persians
they were
scholars
using
also
Arabic, yeah,
wrote in
absolutely.
Arabic. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, Brother Hashim.
What we are expecting is that you're not going to say all these sciences are found in the Vedas now.
Okay, yeah, Brother Hashim, someday please come down to India. We'll sit and have a good discussion. Yeah, thank you all.
Inshallah, yes. By the way, have a look at this website. It's called 1001inventions.com, one word, and you'll find a lot of early Islamic inventions, works like Ibn Sina's canon book, Kitab al-Tib. It was a medical reference in Europe for 500 years. This was like the main medical journal they were using at that time. So
Look
there's
at
a
the
lot of
Banu
things
Musa
like this on that website. Please do have a look. Don't refer to people like Hood Boy or enemies of Islam.
Look up Banu Musa brothers and you see their book on marvelous machines. They were incredible. The kind of intricate machines and motions they could make was way beyond what most other people had done. If you look at the work that Ibn al-Haytham did in optics, That was none of that had been done before at all, and the work he had to do in geometry and quadric surfaces in order to figure out the optics was also pretty extraordinary. I mean, you could really go on. It's worth learning about. It's worth understanding a bit more of the history. There is a continuity, but absolutely there is credit to India, and they also continued working for a period of time. There's a good argument that they independently developed calculus a good 250 years before Newton. There's also a good argument that Newton's calculus is essentially a algebraic implementation of the way that the Arabs did geometry in the first place. There's a lot of interlinking. But of all the people, the Arab writers were some of the best at giving credit where credit is due to whoever from wherever they got it from, and they were some of the best at integrating and bringing in ideas no matter where they came from. You know, from whether they were ancient Greek, Indian, Chinese, all over the place. They pulled in ideas and they gave them due credit, and they worked on them and spoke about them, critiqued them fairly. And gave their own views and own developments of them. One last one to mention, not many people mention about Ibn Sina, known as Avicenna in the West, is he came up with the concept that he called male in his book, which I have in Ashifa. And that concept male was taken by Newton and called momentum. If you combine fluxions, his new geometry, with the concept of momentum, you immediately get Newtonian mechanics. In other words, Ibn Sina's conception of how to think about mass and velocity was what gave birth to the scientific revolution from the Newtonian era onwards in Europe. And that was brand new. So there's a lot of stuff. Science was very well pursued and respected. It being ilm in general, it being a united philosophy, was a bonus, was a good thing, was a plus point. When the Europeans started ripping philosophy into a bunch of different discrete separate subjects, they just grew the possibility for each of those subjects to start generating their own contradictions with other subjects more and more and more. And it's become a mess now with
ISLma,
hundreds of specializations. So
and Brother ISLma, the fact that when you mentioned earlier about how they would give credit to the earlier works that came before it, and that also included preserving the language of the earlier works as well.
Yep.
And when you juxtapose that between the other empires when they had that same opportunity, you get the opposite. You get the destruction of language. Meaning, for example, for almost 2,000 years, the Egyptian language was lost because of what the Romans did when they literally conquered the Egyptian Empire.
Very good point. Yeah.
And then later on, when you have the Mongols, well, the Mongols were literally known. The Mongol Empire were literally known for genocide. The Tanguts, and also I forgot the other empire that they literally wiped up the face of the earth, literally, and that included their language, their civilization, everything. So we see that when it comes, and what would they do with the works? They will burn the works. They will burn the works and they will get rid of it. That's why there are so many things about the ancient empires that we have no idea, because the ruling empires would just destroy them. So you juxtapose that between what the Muslims did and what the Muslims did when they formed their empire and they saw the works of other countries, of other empires. What did they do? They didn't destroy them. They didn't destroy the works. They didn't try to translate them and pull off as their own. No, they gave credit to them. They built on it and they gave credit to them. That's why we know where those sources even came from. So I don't necessarily understand the well, never mind. I think you get the idea.
No, yeah, it's a good point. And the Greeks, for example, appeared to generate so much foundational stuff, but they may well have just been because they did a lot of conquering, and they may well have just written everything in Greek. And we don't know a lot of stuff. We know Mesopotamians had abacuses and did some geometry and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, we digressed. I think the point's been quite clearly made.
Thank you all for the discussion. Hope we will meet you all again. We'll have a good discussion. Thank you very much.
Inshallah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.